Oh my gosh.
Welcome to Brave Indigenous Conversations with Joan Jack, and this is the first ever Brave Indigenous Conversations with Deadly Kookoms and Aunties. And I'm going to begin like I usually begin, which is reading a piece of writing I found that I absolutely love, and it's called Brave Space. Together we will create brave space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars, and we all have caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard everywhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together. And we will work on it side by side. That was written by a Black woman, Mickey Scott B. Jones, and she's gone to the spirit world now. So, like I said, this is so exciting. Oh my God. I'm so excited. I can jump out of my
Hold on
skin.
to your hat, I say.
Your hat. Intro line, and then we'll get going. So, as those of you listening obviously know, I have a podcast. And then inside, those of you may not know that I also have a private Facebook group that I started in September 12th, 2020 called Deadly Kookoms and Aunties. And I have a small team of admins that we all do the admin work together because our group has almost 28,000 damn deadly cookums and aunties in it. And we have an activity rate, which is really significant, of 60% or over since day one. Like, I don't know how many of you have joined Facebook groups because your friend invited you and you don't want to hurt their feelings, so you just accept. But you never go look at the group. I mean, I do that all the time. And so, as the creator of the group, I can see the engagement stats, and it's crazy. No Facebook groups have that steady engagement. So, and the admins in the group, Ann Ball, Mel Whitesell, and Sylvia Eastman, do an incredible job with me of just monitoring the group. And then we're all helping each other in the group because no one in a group of 28,000 women, no one sees all the posts. Nobody, not even the admins. You just see what you open up when you open it up and scroll for a while. But anyways, so that's the Deadly Cincinnati's. So Roxanne has been a part of the group. Roxanne Shuttleworth has been a part of the group for a while, long while, since almost the beginning. And she posted in the Deadlies the other day, okay, Joan, I've caught up on all the podcasts that there's 26 episodes now. And when's the next one? And we had some loss in our community over Christmas, and I didn't feel like doing this. And so I was like, soon, soon. And then she private messaged me and she said, hey, Joan, can you have more than one guest on your podcast? I said, yeah. Why? She said, have you seen The View? And I was like, yeah, of course I've seen The View. Why? I still didn't get it, Roxanne. Like, even after you said it, I was like, yeah, I've seen it. She said, well, we should have brave Indigenous conversations with Deadly Cookums and Aunties. I was like, yes, we should. So I'm hoping that this is going to be our core group until
Yes.
it's not the core group. And then we'll have a guest, and we're going to do this once a month on the last Friday of every month. We started late today because we all had technical trouble, but so what? We're here now. And like with the podcast, everybody introduces themselves because I stand for the possibility that every human being is seen and heard as who they say they are, not who I see them as or who I say they are, but who they say they are. So that's why, in our culture, people introduce themselves, eh? Mostly all of our cultures, you introduce yourself and people are happy to meet you. So we're going to go around a round of
Yeah.
introductions first, and then we'll come back to the top. So we're just starting randomly with the way I see people. So I'm going to invite Charm, aka Dr. B. So we have our own doctor on the show. So Charm, Dr. B, would you please introduce yourself? Where you're from, where you're sitting right now, whatever you want to share.
Okay. Well, first, Joan, I really want to thank you for inviting me to participate in this. I'm really, really excited to be here and to be sharing as a group of Kookoms and Aunties. I just think this is exciting. For viewers, my name is Dr. Barbara Harris, but I'm changing my name to Charm. That's why it says Charm Aka Dr. B. I live in Vancouver. I grew up in Alberta. I belong to the Cold Lake Band. My father was a residential school survivor. I left home at a very early age and came to Vancouver, and I've lived here most of my life. When I was in almost 40, I only had a grade 8 education because I left home very young. When I was almost 40, I decided to go back to school, and I spent 15 years in university to get to become Dr. B. And, taught in the university, did lots of whatever stuff, academic stuff for 15 years. And then I was also working from 2000 when I finished my master's. I was working in community as a mental health therapist, which I still do. Since 2009, I've been full-time just being a therapist. Everything else. Finished school, left UBC, and I've just been a therapist since 2009 to now. That's all I've been doing. And yeah, I don't know what else. I'm getting
I just wanted
to get more into ceremony, and I'm back sweating again, and I'm really happy about that. And that's about it for me.
Yay! And the other thing is, I think one of your areas of therapy specialty is EMDR, because it's a particular thing. We won't be talking about that today, but people can Google EMDR and look up what is EMDR. And what I like about EMDR is you don't have to necessarily rehash all of your trauma. The guided. Wow, the feedback is really something today. There's all kinds of. Now, what's Becky doing? She's going walk away.
Maybe, I wonder if we all mute while everybody's
talking. We're not talking. What a good idea. Okay. We'll try. Sorry to the listeners. There's lots of garble. So, Becky and Roxanne, we're gonna. If you're not talking, you got to mute. Okay.
How do you mute? Okay. I gotta figure that out. How to mute.
At the bottom of this. There, you did it, Becky. You did it. Okay. How about you, Roxanne? Can you mute? Just to practice. For those of us driving along and listening in Spotify. Oh, there you did it. Okay. All right. So Charm is done. And so now we are going to invite Roxanne to introduce herself. And I'll mute as well while you're introducing yourself.
Thank you, Joan. And hello, everybody. I am a Deadly Kookom, and I've been a Deadly Kookom for 14 years. I can't believe my grandson is now 14 years old. I always introduce myself first as a grandmother because that is my first, how I identify. I am a mom, and I have a son who is, I believe, going to be 41 this year, and my daughter's going to be 38. And my son has two boys. How do I start? I'm originally from Bacon Ridge, which is the Métis or non-status community attached to Ebb and Flow First Nation in Manitoba. We're actually quite south. We're one of the more southern First Nations and communities along the west shore of Lake Manitoba. There's a little place called Little Lake on the west side called Ebb and Flow Lake, and that's where I'm from. And my people originated there. Next, just south of us is a little community on a map that says Minnesota. And it's actually originally, the original name was Manitoba House. And it was the first community in Manitoba. And that's where most of my people, my ancestry originates from. There's a graveyard there with graves from 1800s. So it is quite like it's an old community. And so right now I am living in Dauphin, Manitoba, which is again just west of my community, less than an hour. I am planning to move home. I did have a business here, and it was Parkland Fabrics. The area I live in is Parkland of Manitoba. And I had a store there which closed a year ago, or 10 months ago. I just didn't survive COVID and all the things that go with it. So I'm moving home, and I do sell fabric from home. I left the University of Manitoba after 20 years, over 20 years in 2011, and went into business for myself, consulting. I was actually traveling with a music band and on the road all over Canada with them as administrator. And at the same time, I was also started designing and making. I'm a sewer, I'm a seamstress, and I still design fabric. You can find my fabric in the fabric stores. I'm not sure where in Vancouver or Toronto. I'd have to check with the mill I work with out of Winnipeg. And so that's what I do. My first experience in post-secondary, I guess, would be I attended college in Medicine Hat. I lived there when I was married, and I'm an administrator. And that was a very good program out of Medicine Hat College. Then when I came home and I applied for a job at the school, and I did training or attended school through Red River College, and I'm a librarian by trade. I tell people, and people are always shocked. I am a librarian, love books, still
What? I didn't know that.
place. And yeah, exactly. So I did that for 5 years, and then I decided I wanted a degree university. So I went to U of M, and I was in pre-med studies, and ended up somehow in the commerce, working in commerce. And like I said, about 20 years. When I started the Asper School of Business, there had been 2 Aboriginal graduates. I think I started in 94, and in their history. And when I left in 2011, we had 69 graduates, Aboriginal graduates. So my time there was very successful. And I'm very fortunate in that I have a very good relationship with all of my alumni, and I can call on them and their expertise anytime. And so, but I grew up in business. My dad's been a business owner as long as I remember. And I think 68, he started a taxi cab in Ebb and Flow, and he sold it in 74. When he had 1 car, and when he sold it, 9 cars. So that's how that business grew. So I was always in business. It was when you're a family-owned business, and I think Joan would have experience with that. Everybody does everything. Like, you just do it all. And so that's how I grew up. So being in commerce was not a big stretch. And so now and often I'm actually in the process of moving home. Got a small house, not a tiny house, but a small house, and it's on our family property. And hydro was finally hooked up a few weeks ago. Now I'm waiting for plumbing. So I'm moving home. Going home is my long-term goal at this point. So I've been designing my house, pinning boards, design ideas, my design ideas. So I'm getting really excited about that, but that's what I've been doing currently. And so that's who I am, a little bit about myself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roxanne. Yay. So you just mute yourself, and
You're
then
welcome.
we'll hear from Becky. Becky Big Canoe, over to you.
Wow, greetings everybody. Wow, what an occasion this is. It's really momentous. I love that we're doing this introduction, because just recently I've adopted a new set of lines about when people meet me, and the first thing I want to tell them about myself. And so lately it's become, hi, I'm Becky Big Canoe, and I'm a carnivore and a recovering diabetic, I'll tell them, because I know that's going to get their interest. And then I also say, and I'm an unapologetic smoker, so deal with it, right? So that gets that out of the way, and then I'm ready for more questions. But really, I'm kind of interested in a lot of things, right? And different from you ladies, my trail was basically activism, different things. And like I started out early on the Free Leonard Peltier Defense Group in Toronto as a youngster. God bless him, he's still inside too, eh? But then I got into like alternative housing. The crazy, I don't know if anybody remembers the Hagersville tire fire. It was like late 91, 92. This massive mountain of tires went on fire down by Hagersville, down by Six Nations. Wow. And it woke everybody up to the fact that there was mountains of these garbages everywhere. And they were becoming real hazards. So I got into like earth ships where they were building homes out of these tires. And I thought, what makes more sense than that, than to use them in a positive way? So I really got interested in that. And then I was going to build my own house. And I happened to stumble across somebody building a straw bale house in Alberta. My husband and I were out there tooling around. And I said, hey, look at that house. It looks different. Let's go see. So we got a tour of this house under construction in Alberta, right? And I said, I think this is what I want. So when we got back to the res, we moved back home in 98 or 99 and raised a little cash to build the house, got a little grant from the band. And I found a straw bale house plan on Habitat for Humanity of all places. So I bought it off online there, $25. I redrew it the way I wanted it, and then I started generally contracting it for the very first time in my life. I was doing something like that, and I would go to the lumber yard and talk to them about my materials takeoff list, and I said, yeah, I'm doing all the wall infill with straw bales, and they all just about dropped their pants and scratching their head, and they're like, what the hell? I said, well, trust me, I'm going to try it. So I need these lumbers for the windows and the doors, and the rest I'll figure it out. And so I hired the wizard of straw bale at the time, Chris Magwood. He helped me build my house. And, 22 years later, it has really served me well. It's solid as hell. I'm not scared of a windstorm or a rain, anything. And I parlayed that into like a somewhat of a career. Like I have to get into this field somehow. And my dream was like, we got to get women into building their own house again, because that's a woman's agency. In the old days, the house was the woman's, and the man was there at her pleasure. And if he behaved himself, he wants entrance to that lodge, eh? So I had this scheme of teaching women how to build this way, and for the longest time, I couldn't accomplish anything. And finally, I hooked up with this amazing group of gals called Keepers of the Circle here in northern Kirkland Lake area. Wow. Didn't they just get a $10 million factory? They're turning an old former youth justice center, like a detention center, into this factory for modular homes, which the buyer owner can give them a set of plans and they can build custom, and all girls on the factory floor and learning the skills. And it's like my dream came true for me, not by my own hand, but what I was hoping to see. And I'm so thrilled right now. I'm just crackling with ideas and just thinking this is a really wonderful result. And so we're continuing to work with the Land Trust. We're doing a indigenization of the Oak Ridges Moraine Trail. A lot of things happening. We just need time, money, and people. And they're all getting on board.
You're amazing, Becky. Okay.
Feel pretty good.
So now what we're going to do is each of us women are going to take some time. I don't know. This is a brave Indigenous conversation. I have no the hell idea what's going to happen. If you're offended by swearing, maybe you should tune out, because maybe we're going to swear. I don't know. But this is a space for us to be who we are. Are you frozen, Roxanne, or shake your head? Oh, no, she's not. Okay. All right. So we'll start with Charm, and you just you share with us what you want to share with us, and then we're going to interact with you. I don't know how the sound problem we were having really was fixed by us muting ourselves. So once you do your share, I'm not
We
sure
could
what's
do a
going to happen.
circle. Do it like a circle so everybody can
Okay,
kind
good
of
one.
reflect.
Okay, good one. Yay! Thank you, Barb.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you go. Okay, you got to mute yourself,
All right.
Roxanne.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna share a concept and then a concept that I came up with. I've been thinking a lot about, because I'm an academic, I read a lot, I write a lot, and I've been thinking about a lot of what's been going on in Canadian society in terms of how they treat Indigenous people, the attitudes, and I started thinking about what's going on in the psyche of the Canadian people. And I've read some other people talk about that. Taiki Alfred did a great talk about the noble savage as a something that occurs within the psyche of the people in North America, in the Western world, I guess you could say. And I was thinking about something. I don't know if you may be more familiar with the story of Manitoulin Island. Manitoulin Island, back in the day, the colonizers, when they came in, they wanted to settle in all of the area around Manitoulin Island, in that area, and they were trying to figure out how to get the native people out of there. They wanted them out. They wanted them off the land because they wanted that land, and they couldn't figure out what they were going to do. And this one government guy, I just can't think of his name right now, but he was in a canoe and he was paddling down the river by Manitoulin Island, and he came up with this brainiac, what he thought was a brainiac idea. And his idea was that what we'll do is we'll just put them all on Manitoulin Island, and they can practice their culture, they can use their, speak their language, they can do whatever they do over there until they die. So I came up with the idea because of what I see. I came up with the concept of the Manitoulin Island syndrome as something that exists in the psyche of the colonized, the whole society, and that what we see in what I've seen. I also wanted to write a book called "Is Anybody Listening?" because when I think of all the research done about education and all the research done about health and all the research done about justice and anything where we're overrepresented, child welfare, you name it, all these things that we're overrepresented in, we always find that we're overrepresented in all the wrong places, as it were, it seems. And the idea is, if and we have communities that don't have clean water, we have communities that don't have they don't have adequate housing, really. There's not enough housing, and the housing in some communities is moldy, everything like this. So there's all of these issues. And even there was a book written in 1989 by Jeffrey York called The Dispossessed: Life and Death in Native Canada. And he talked about what was going on in a bunch of different communities. Like, it was just like a snapshot. Here's what issues here, issues here, issues here, issues here. And you can read the book 40 years later, 30 years later, or whatever, and we still have these same issues. And we look at missing and murdered women. They just nobody's really paying attention to that or giving it attention. The women on the pig farm that died on the pig farm. Okay, one guy went to jail, but mostly it got swept under the carpet. There's probably a lot more to that story than we know. The justice system, no matter how much research and how many people have built a career, researching the justice system for Indigenous people, there's still a lot of the same problems. The education system, all of these systems and I really believe that embedded in the psyche of the people is this Manitoulin Island syndrome. If we just ignore them long enough, they'll kill themselves, they'll kill each other, they'll die of a drug overdose, they'll just go away, they'll disappear, they'll start, whatever, something bad's going to happen. Whatever's going to happen to them, if we just ignore them long enough, they're going to go away. They're going to be gone. And in the US, I think they thought that was going to happen. And the Indigenous people are not as visible there as they are in Canada. And that's idea that, I mean, it's very apparent there that they're just ignoring them, and somehow or another they've made them invisible, and everybody thinks they're gone. They're there, but they think they're gone, and they want us to be gone, and they just keep ignoring us, hoping that one day we'll be gone. So Manitoulin Island syndrome, I think this is so deeply embedded within the psyche on this continent that I see it all the time, and I'm just like, how do we uproot that which is embedded so deeply in the psyche of a nation or of a whole continent of people? So that's
really
my
interesting. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do this in a circle, which is great. Thank you so much, Charm, for pointing that out. We don't have any sound problem here because we're going to go in turn. Okay, Roxanne, you want to go first and give Charm some feedback about or share what happened for you when she was sharing?
Yes, I've never heard that Manitoulin Island syndrome. I'm going to look it up and look for it. And yeah, it's
I coined that
what
term
I
myself.
see, okay. So I see, and I agree with all these systems don't work. When I step back and I look at the bigger picture, they don't work for anybody. They're not only not working for us, they're working for anyone else in Canada. But what I see is, from my perspective, and I studied world history, and one of my majors was actually two majors was native studies and history. But in doing history, I also took some world history classes, and what I've come to conclude is that white people, non-Indigenous people, white people, I'll say white people, European people, they were colonized as well. But they were colonized so long ago, like I'm talking hundreds of years ago, it's not even their realm anymore. Whereas our colonization was actually recent. Theirs was hundreds of years ago. And in learning about it and Rome and how they took over and how they worked hand in hand with churches and in their colonization process of Europe. I mean, today, most people don't realize, for example, one of the few monarchies left, the British monarchy, it's the Archbishop who crowns the Queen or Queen. And everything is done hand in hand. And so now we've got that system here in Canada. We're still under the crown. And so for all the Canadians, and it happened actually quite recently in Quebec, who want the crown gone, get rid of the Queen, we don't need to be a British monarchy. They don't realize that in doing that, all the land reverts back to us. And Quebec found that out a few years ago when they were trying to separate. And then they were told, well, you actually only have about 10% of that province. If you separate, that's all you get. And so separation of Quebec stopped. We don't hear about it anymore because they realized the land belongs to us. So in listening to what you're saying about the systems, none of the systems are working. And in my opinion, we don't have justice system. We have a legal system. We don't have justice. There is no such thing in Canada. And education system, the thing about the education system, and there's actually a lot of research on that, is it was developed for an agricultural era. And we have not been an agricultural society for, again, about 100 years. So we left the agricultural era and we went into industrial era and we left that and now we're in the information. And during COVID, it really hit home. But none of us or none of our leadership has the brains or wherewithal to have taken advantage of what was going on during COVID. But I was worried about my grandsons, and I talked to my son and daughter-in-law, and I said, I'm concerned because of they're not socializing, and all the things we were hearing about. And they said, no, Mom, they're not like us. And my son told me, he said, they visit their cousins all the time online.
Yeah.
And I'm like, stopped, and I thought, yeah, there was no internet when my kids were kids. And so things like that. And so it made me step back and really think of, yes, there's a lot of communities that the internet, but had we raised our head and looked around, Mexico within a month had 2 TV channels dedicated to education. So everybody had access to their classrooms. We didn't do that. Like, how stupid. Kept saying, like, the world is ahead of other people are doing. So even our education system, which we could have taken the opportunity to change and work better for people, we did not do that. And the thing about, again, reading, I think it's in California was the first one, and there's quite a few since then, where they don't, they're what school boards or divisions, I'm not sure how they do it over there. They broke their school year up into quarters. So they don't have June, July, August, summer anymore. Families are free to choose when they take their 3 months off. Teachers are free to choose when they take those 3 months off.
Wow.
And it's working. Everybody's, it's working. My aunt used to take her kids and go to Florida for 6 weeks every winter. She worked, she was a teacher at Red River College, and she told the kids' schools that they're going to be as educated by being away from home in another culture, another country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she did that every year, and they did provide or supply her with some schoolwork. They took it and finished it, but they were experiencing living in another country, another state, climate, all of that. So she chose to take their time off in the winter, and and had the ability to do that. So systems, the thing that's come to me is everyone, and including our own chiefs and council, our own governing bodies, they only think as far as the next election, and that's it. And my brother and his partner, business partner, my brother hasn't worked for anybody for like 30 years. He works for himself. They did consulting work. I'd worked with them as well. But what they did is they went to a community, and this was I think it was in the 90s. They were hired by a First Nation treaty community, no, not treaty, but a First community somewhere in the southern states. I'm not sure which one. I'm sure he could tell me, or I could ask Alex, my friend, about it. But anyway, his partner. And they went to review their 100-year plan with this community. And I was just blown away. I'm like, what? And they said, yes, and it makes sense because you do 100-year visioning, goal setting, 100-year strategic plan. And they were in year 50. And they were working with this community to review it. They were there for 4 or 5 days. So we need to stop thinking in 4-year increments. We need to think bigger, longer in our planning and what we're doing in our communities. And we know that, the provincial government or the federal government they only think up to 4 years, next election, and I, when I'm feeling cynical, I say they need 2 terms to get their pension for life, right? So once you're in government for 2 terms, you have a pension forever, $60+ a year pension. I'm like, what the hell's up with that? And, nobody gets that. And they're doing public work. It's not private individual work. It's like, holy cow, they get, once they're in term for 2 terms, they're forever promised, a set amount. So anyway, that's I agree with what Charm is saying and understand that, and and yes, we are ignored, but I think some of it is intentional. But I also think for the average person out there, they're just doing their own thing and surviving. Like they're not.
Clueless.
I don't think they're
Clueless.
purposely ignoring us.
Well, yeah.
So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Cool. Okay. Thanks. If you could mute yourself. I see we've lost the visual on Charm, but I'm sure she'll be back. And I disappeared for a while because I'm having internet trouble here. But Becky, so what did you think of what Charm was saying about what she created? She's coined this Manitoulin Island syndrome, of basically, we're invisible. We're invisible, and they just keep thinking we're going to go away.
Yeah, like they have a giant broom with which they can just sweep us under their rug or whatever kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It is an interesting thing to consider because, it took place in a historical context in a sense, and yet it echoes to today. But it really, really took place at a time when there was basically 2 or 3 groups for maybe, us and them, and us included us on the reserves, and like Roxanne was saying, the ones on the outskirts who were half breed or whatever they call it, different things. And on the other side, it was either English or French, but the English also included like Ukrainian and Norse and Russian and Doukhobor and like a lot of variety of European people, but they all agreed to set all that aside and become what they called Canadian, which English language for commerce and everything else. And they thus then put us through a program of having to adopt that language. And now I think I bet you if they took a look in hindsight, they'd say, man, we really bit ourselves in the ass doing that, making all the Indians learn the same language, because now we can talk to each other and plot accordingly. But I'm also thinking too, the fabric of our country is changing daily. New scraps of colors are coming in all the time, and it's like the blanket that never was us. It was basically brown and white, but now it's getting a new mosaic of colors coming in the airports and ports every day. So what we're actually talking about now, we better start to talk about the future, because the attitude that the largely white past people had towards us is not the same as what new people who are coming in, who've had a chance to see our stories on the news and understand our struggles. They may be more sympathetic toward us, or maybe not, but they're beginning to make up a large part of the fabric. They're weaved in the cities and in the towns, and that's why we have a housing crisis. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And it's a very big part of our reality now. Because as their numbers increase, under the system as it's set up now, enables them to creep into the positions of power by the power of the vote, right? So these are things we need to consider. And the other thing is like Roxanne was saying, many of our children are now being educated by a computer, and also with there's teachings in common coming out of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and all these teachings about the climate crisis and the need to get rid of oil and gas, and they have a whole suite of beliefs now that they're putting into the children. This is an indoctrination that's going on. Just like the old religion used to be, this is a new set of indoctrination, and all of these children are digital natives, where we were not, because we had to adopt it later in life. But for them, it's the pipeline of everything, of their understanding, right? So we have to kind of examine all these pieces of it so that we get a better picture of what we're dealing with. And now I've been in various places and listening in a lot of conversations, and what I'm getting in an overall sense is that everyone is feeling disconnected from other people. They're feeling isolated, alone, disconnected, unbelonging, things like that, right? And our current political system is only exacerbating that by giving us things to fight about. They're dropping in these little bombs that we all start to bicker about, and that's to distract us from what's really going on. So a political system that works for the people is actually done by the people. And what Tom was saying there made me think about how, despite what has happened to us and how they have behaved, it tells us in our prophecy that when we get to this place in the road, which we're at now, and they had foreseen it, everyone has a choice now. That road or this road. And it says in that prophecy, it'll be the Indigenous people preferring a way out of this impasse of political deadlock, social dislocation, the breakdown of the supply chains that feed us all. We have to be realistic about that too. Like the economy is beginning to shake and ready to collapse. And when that does, it's only a few days of hunger that puts all people's minds strictly in survival mode. No longer can they think from their higher faculties. So what we need is a system in place that relates us, gives us all a voice, divests us of the need for a federal or provincial government, because all control will have to come back local when the systems collapse. So what we do is we design a kinship way, I call it, because I don't want to call it clan system, because clan system is ours of the tribal people. But kinship way can open up and include everyone by, if you take 12 kinship groups and assign every person to a kinship group, then they have at least that's their first level of belonging. I belong to this group, and we've got 12 of them. So in that grouping, this is how they all operate. In one grouping, you take the breadth of the population. You leave the 12 and unders out because they're children. But everyone else has a slice in the demographics of that group, male and female, and two-spirit at the lower levels where people are young. So then you use our circular method of consultation on issues, problems, concerns, activities we must undertake together. And you let those demographic groups come together. Like the Deadly Kookoms is a demographic. We drop an issue in the middle of the table, and we all talk about it, using our good minds, using our good ways to come up with our position. And so the men are doing the same. The younger men, the younger women, we're all considering the same questions. So then now we can come back to the table with, this is what we feel we need, or whatever. This is our position. So you do this kind of consultation, and also each of the 12 groups looks amongst themselves and finds the very best two representatives, a head man and a head woman, that can aggregate the group's concerns and take them to the next level, which is a council of 24. They're all sitting there, all knowing what the people sitting behind them want, need, are concerned for. So this is another level of belonging. And it starts to help knit us back together. And I envision all those pieces, those colors, the original white and brown, and making a beautiful star blanket, something that's coherent and can prevent chaos amongst us, which is what's going to arise if things continue in Canada and the rest of the world the way they are now. That's my contention. And I hope that's a good reply to that Beautiful intro that Charm made there.
I just think we're all so interesting. I just love. So for my part, Charm, I've written pieces, short piece of writing I wrote recently in the Lawyers Daily, which is an online magazine, and I have a few pieces of writing in there. And I wrote a piece called Willful Blindness, because I've asked myself this question too, like, what the hell? Like, what the hell is going on with Canadians? Like, they say they care and then nothing changes, and then I'm told, oh, you're too mean, you're too angry, you're not going to get anything that way. And it's like this adversarial, it's like we are trapped on Manitoulin Island in an adversarial paradigm, where the Canadian state continues to trap us. And instead of celebrating, like, I'm not a proponent of we're all the same. I'm not. I'm a proponent of we each are who we are, and as we collect in those similar groupings, that's who we are. And I'm doing a piece of writing right now called We Are All Trees, which talks about all this using the analogy of the forest, in that birch trees are birch trees and pine trees are pine trees and spruce trees are spruce trees. And yeah, we're all trees and we're connected in the root system of the forest, and that's how we're connected. And so that's what's missing, is that understanding in the Canadian psyche, and that the othering of us as Indigenous people is not of our own creation. Like, if you go to any reserve in Canada, you're going to find other people who some have married in, some just moved in, they don't want to live in the forest they were born in. They're like, oh my God, I'm just gonna pick up my roots and move over here. And so they feel more comfortable with us as Indigenous people. And even some of them are what would be described or could be described as racist. And we all know who they are. We all know that their beliefs are different than ours. But because we come from a space of acceptance and tolerance, for who you say you are, we tolerate a lot, So when you talked about that, I thought it was another really great image to look at what's happened legally, instead of all of the court cases that we've won. Like, that's another way of looking at it, or asking the question, how could it be that, I'm making this up, somebody can correct me if I don't have it exactly right, but how could it be that we've gone to the Supreme Court of Canada and we've won like 98% of our cases, the law, but nothing's changed on the ground? It's because of what you're talking about, Charm, that in the psyche of the bureaucracy of the Canadian state, they think we're not here, or they see us as a threat. We're seen as a threat, rather than celebrating our humanity and being curious about how is it that we're different as Indigenous people, and how, wow. Like, if I go to a Ukrainian household, I'm so excited. I want to eat what they're eating. I want to see what they're doing. I want to be told, yeah, you can do this dance with us, but this dance you can't do. Like, I want to relate, eh? And I'm excited to do that. And that's a very Indigenous way of being, whereas other cultures aren't like that. And so you made me think about that legalized racism is legalized in this country, and the common law as a tool of colonization is really at the core of what's at issue here. And that's another thing that needs to be looked at. I'm sure somebody smarter than me did a PhD about that too, that, the common law is really the key tool of keeping us all on Manitoulin Island. And I'm not saying I don't want to be on Manitoulin Island. That's the other thing. Some days I think, thank God we got put on these reserves, because would there be anything left if we hadn't been oppressed and isolated and separated? because ironically, we're still here. Hello, you know, and as messed up as our reserves are, and for sure, we top the stats on all the social, excuse me, we top the stats on all the social markers. And you won't find, I have not found more profound moments of kindness than in my own space, you know, with my own people. And a lot of it, why am I choking? This is so big. Hang on, I'm going to get some water. Oh my God, this is such a big idea. Your big idea is choking me. So, what was I going to say? I was saying the vehicle for our unity is our laughter and our ability to laugh at ourselves, you know, like that we as Indigenous people, it's very un-Indigenous not to be able to laugh at yourself in your humanity, you know? And so in response to the Manitoulin Island syndrome, which was deliberate and still remains deliberate as a way of othering us and separating us and creating all these willfully blind Canadians. I just want to close with this, responding to your comment. I rode in the Uber from the airport to the downtown here in Vancouver, where I am today. And I got in the Uber and I could see visibly that my driver, I wasn't sure, he was brown. I wasn't sure where he was from because he just had a toque on, like I couldn't really see him. And I said, we greeted each other. How are you doing? And I said, good. I said, really, I've got nothing to complain about. Nothing to complain about. I mean, if you look around the world, what the hell would I complain about? I'm doing good. I'm riding to Vancouver downtown in an Uber, you know, like I'm good. Blessed. I feel grateful, you know. And then he said, well, really, I've been taught that we shouldn't compare ourselves to others, that each of us has to just be grateful with what we have. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. So I said to him, of all the Uber drivers in Vancouver, I get a guru. And then he turned and looked at me and he said, no, I'm not a guru. And I said, well, who are you then? And he came from India and he was Sikh. And I said to him, you know what? I get really annoyed when white people say to me, well, I don't know anything. Can you teach me? And it's like, oh my God, go and inform yourself. And all the studies say, you know, it's not our job to teach people. They got to teach themselves. But I find myself in situations where I need a guide, you know, I need a teacher. So I said to him, I don't know a damn thing about Sikh people, nothing. I probably have anything that I know all mixed up and made up. And I said, would you spend our ride together to share with me anything you want to share about who you are as a Sikh? And he looked again. He said, I will. And so then he gave me the most beautiful Sikh 101 cab ride. And I learned things about Sikh people. And he said to me at one point, he said, and you know, he said, I read a lot. He said, you Indigenous people have the same worldview as us Sikh originally did, you know, that traditional Sikh worldview where everyone's equal, you know. And I checked my markers, like I said to him, well, how, you know, how about women? Like, how are women treated? He said the same. He said, in the Sikh religion, a woman can be a priest, a man can be a priest. A woman can be a warrior, a man can be a warrior. And I was like, whoa. And then our ride ended, eh? But it's about, there's no curiousness in the Canadian population. They're just not curious about who the hell we are stranded here on Manitoulin Island. And I'll just wrap it up with this thought, like what Roxanne was saying about we've moved from, I loved what you said, like we've moved from the issue of agriculture, the agricultural age, to the industrial age. And now we're in the age of technology. And our people are right there. I see you, Charm. Our people are right there. Like my mom is 84 and she FaceTimed me yesterday. What the hell? You know, we're right there. So go ahead, Charm. Unmute yourself.
Okay, maybe just have a little wrap. Maybe we can do that when we do the circle. We can have whoever brought the topic up can have a little.
Sure, good idea.
You know,
yeah, sure.
So, it really was interesting to listen to each of the perspectives. And I'm really going to think about that, because I'm probably going to write an article about this, because I want it down on paper somewhere. But as everybody was talking, there was a couple of things that came to my mind. And one, like, because I kind of asked a question, so what do we do with this kind of Manitoulin Island syndrome kind of scenario? And as was already shared, this idea of, how to, my interpretation of what was said was, how do we find the common ground, as people walking on this earth, versus being caught in all that division. Like, we need to kind of get the common ground. And, with what Becky was saying, I mean, I think the way things are going right now, that's the only way it's going to work moving forward, is that, it's going to be people to people finding common ground, working together to work through what's going to come. So I really, I'm right on board with you with that, Becky. I thought, I want your number. We got to talk some more. But I was thinking about a couple other things too. So, I was just, the repetition. I was thinking about, the Royal Commission on Aboriginal People, the Truth and Reconciliation, and all the recommendations, how they're not being followed. So that was just kind of more examples of how it isn't really working. My thing is typing as what I'm saying here. I don't know why. But there was a couple things I wanted to mention, which was, my uncle told me one time. He said that there was a medicine man who said from our area, who said that one day the children were going to come home and bring back our culture. And this is a very interesting thing, which I connect to something I heard another elder say on. I was watching a show on APTN about intergenerational trauma, and they were talking about the residential schools, and they had a mother and daughter on there talking, but they brought this elder on, and she talked about blood memory, and she said that that while we carry the trauma of our ancestors, we also carry the healing, the wisdom, the power of our ancestors from before that. So I've kind of really internalized that, because, as my uncle said, there are certain things that have happened that have happened to me, that I know that when he was saying that our young people will come back and bring back our culture, I'm part of that, because I mean, he's in his 80s, right? I was in my 40s or something when he said that. And it does apply to us. We are, and it is in our DNA. That's not something they can't take away. The other thing was, I made a note here, was so there's a question also. I'm not, going on the conversation, but just bringing up the point that the question of who rises up, who leads the way, and why. Like, what is it in those people that are leading the way, such as yourself, Joni, all of you, you're leaders. And what is it? What is it that makes us who we are? And this business of rising up, like, this is a really important aspect, is the rising up, that we, well, not only did we not die, but we're rising up too. This is a really important part. And there's a woman, I think about, something that Roxanne said. I mean, it cuts across a lot of different cloth. It's not just the Indigenous people of Canada. I mean, this is happening all over the world. It happens to women. It happens to, minority groups, people with disabilities, all kinds of things, people with addictions, whatever, mental health issues. There's a lot of this, othering and wanting people to just disappear. But there's this woman that when I was doing my PhD, I read this book by she's a philosopher who never was really recognized for her work. She wrote a book called The Sovereignty of Good. And in that book, she said that clear vision commands right action. And I think all the research is supposedly a jab at providing clear vision so that there will be right action. That's what we would like to think. And the big issue in the Aboriginal kind of conversations is that the problem is that a lot of people have exploited us doing research, and it all sits around collecting dust. and there is no follow through. Like, does anybody else even read it after you wrote it? Like, okay, you got a, you maybe you got a CERT grant, or you got tenure, or this or that or the other, but how did that benefit the community? And what happened with it besides it's collecting dust? And I think those of us that are the rising up, I think the thing is that we say, that stuff needs to come off the shelf, because the wisdom of our people is there. It's all around us. It's there. It's in our psyche. It's in our blood. It's in our DNA, but it's also sitting on a lot of people's shelves being ignored too. And that has to be brought out, So I don't know. That's just kind of a couple of thoughts. I really appreciate all of the things you guys said, because, I am going to write an article about this and try and get it published. And I think each one of those things is important things to think about in terms of who's going to be even reading that. So I really appreciate what everybody said. And I think that's the question, is those of us that rise up, how do we tweak that in the souls of all of the other people? Like, how do we tweak that and help them to just rise up too? So anyway, that's my
awesome.
little.
I think we're going to go around one more time. And then what I'm thinking is, we've already.
Can I just say something to what Charm just said there, the last thing she said?
Sure,
Because
Becky.
not only do we have that common language now, but we also have AI now, and anything printed or spoken can be translated into all the languages, just like that. And so we have a lot of newcomers here that haven't even picked up the English language yet. If we're so kind as to inform them of everything that we've already informed the people of, bring them up to speed. Because like I said, they are growing in influence in our country. We don't even know them. Like what Joan was saying, we don't even know them. We need to be able to be diplomatically armed into being able to communicate with them and understand each other, just like you said, Joan. So I'll leave it with that.
Nice. So I think I'd like to offer Roxanne some little closing comment on this point, and then I'll make one, and then let's just do a circle check and see where we're at. Go ahead, Roxanne. Did you have anything more to add on this point?
Just to let you all know, I have so enjoyed this, and I was taking notes, and I know we could probably go on for hours with this topic, but I don't think our audience would wants to hear us going on for hours. But I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciated the talking points, and so that's just my ending comments. And I mean, like I said, we could go on and on and on, but we don't have time for that or that. And I'm trying to be aware of our hour, although I know we've gone over, but we'll get the hang of this, right? And so yeah, that's all I would add. Thank you for your sharing, all of you, and yeah, just that.
So thank you, Roxanne. So the muting thing really worked well. I stayed live so that I could interact as the hostess or host, whatever the hell I'm supposed to be called. And for me, what I just got a little humorous epiphany. As a child, I used to go to my grandparents a lot, and especially my grandpa. Well, even my Kookom, but sometimes my grandpa. You've all experienced this, I think, in many cultures, where you're a young person and you head over to the old people, and you just want to, I don't know, see if they got any candy or what's left in the top of the wood stove that's left over to eat or whatever. And then my grandpa would be in a talking mood, and he would say, "Sit down here, Joan." And oh my God, I'd have to sit there and listen. And so, when you said that, Roxanne, we don't want to go too long. I mean, maybe this is the new way in this world of technology, where we're going to talk to our young people, and some of them will listen. Some of them will sit still and listen, and some of them will come and go from this recording. So that's a new thought I had today about how what makes us so powerful and free, even on Manitoulin Island, trapped in the legal racism that we're trapped in, we're still free because we continue to adapt and evolve and transform, and it's who we are. That's why we're still here, because it's the way to be Indigenous, is to continue to transform. And inside us is still the core of our values of who we are, that we are our land. I am my land, I am my people, and so if some of my land is polluted, well, I'm polluted. If some of my people are messed up, I'm messed up, because that's I am, and so I think our original plan was for each of us to go around, but we're all too deadly. I think one Kookom a month, and then we all talk. So I think, Charm, you got first go. And if we want to do this again, maybe in a couple of weeks instead of once a month, us for women. And then I know I spoke to Tina Keeper, and she was like, oh my God, Joan, that's so amazing. You've got to do that. And I'd like to keep some consistency for now. But if there's another Deadly Kookom that watches this, or Deadly Auntie that watches this, that really feels like she needs to be a part of this, hey, I can have up to 10 guests on this platform at a time. It's just that we can't all talk at once, which is not the Indigenous way anyway. It's not our way to talk over each other anyway. It's not, unless we're at home having tea, just laughing around. But when we're in circle, it's this way that happened today. So
Hey, Joan, ask your tech guy if he can give us a little feather emoji, so we can put the feather emoji in our window when we're talking.
yeah, on that note, let's wrap this up. And then once I stop going live, let's just stay and debrief. We can stay together like this, but nobody will be hearing us debrief. So wow, that was so amazing, so powerful. I feel like we're at the start of something big, and your request for the feather emoji in the space of podcasting, for me personally, I have found my niche. Like, I have a PhD in visiting, man. I can visit till the cows come home.
We can all talk now, right? We can unmute and talk.
Well, after. Wait till we get offline.
We're not yet. Okay, sorry.
I'm just going to do the closing, and then I'll let you know when we're offline.
Okay.
So we'll all just bullshit. So with each other. So in closing, what I wanted to say was that today, I think we've created, the four of us, we've created something very good based on something very old, and in the space of something very new, So Brave Indigenous Conversations is typically, and will continue to be, individual conversations. And now it's evolving and morphing into collective conversation, which is beautiful. I would love to have these collective conversations with men, with young people, with whatever, I'm just so excited. And so everybody needs to subscribe, boy. Hit the subscribe button on my YouTube channel, because it looks like no one's listening. And yet I go places and people were like, oh, I was listening to your podcast. It's so good. So even my guests, not mentioning any names, I don't know if anybody on here has not subscribed to my YouTube. And then go into the YouTube and share some of the other episodes, because the new world of technology is all about the algorithm, And then in lieu, Becky, to respond to your request, this does cost me something now. I pay for the StreamYard, I pay for another platform, and I pay for my editor. And I'm not whining, I'm just saying what's so. And so there are costs associated with doing this that I'm, happy to cover right now. And as we grow, like those big podcasters, they have sponsors. you know? And then I would get an editor who would edit it, and we wouldn't be live anymore because we would have to edit in space for the commercials of the sponsors. That's how this all goes, you know, unless we manifest something else. I don't know what. But the podcast model is, it's not live, it's edited, and then the podcast sponsors commercials are in there because that's the whole framework of media, you know, and social media. So, and then lastly, and then we'll stay and visit offline. These earrings are MMIW. Brave Indigenous Conversations, all about the earrings, you know, because hey, I'm an earring addict. These are MMIW earrings that were given to me. I'm not even sure where. Somewhere on the ride that Charmaine William Larson and I and other Native American women, we were the two Canadians, did in 2019, the Medicine Wheel Run with our bikes. And somewhere along the trail, these were given to me, and I wore them with the bike. I wore them, so I wanted to wear them today, but I don't know who made them. So yeah, all right. Thank you for listening. And those of you listening, please share, whether you're listening on Spotify or YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever you're listening, please share so others can hear our voices. Miigwech.